Welcome into the Dad Verb Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking about things that we did as kids that we're going to try to keep our kids from doing. Parenting here in 2024 is a lot different than how we all kind of grew up in the 90s. So, we're going to be talking about or highlighting some of those changes, covering off on some of our favorite video games from our childhood, which is something that we were supposed to talk about in the last episode, but we're moving it to here. And we're going to kick things off with our sick check. And good? Everyone healthy?
Yeah.
No good.
Good.
Still
healthy. So I'm actually really excited for this topic this week because this is something that we kind of grazed on in a previous episode where we talked about how kind of like, America burned the village kind of a thing. And the world has definitely changed. And like I mentioned, we did mention it before about how, the simple act of kind of going out, riding your bike, walking home from school, those are just like things that we did as kids. But now like everything around us is a threat. Something can happen to kids on their way. It's just like so things have changed. But that's kind of where we're going with this as well. I think each of us are going to kind of try to bring something to the table with regards to this of things that our kids are not going to be doing, versus how we grew up. But Andrew, how about we kick it off with you, man? What's something that you did that you don't think daughter's going to be doing?
So daughters, yeah. Great. So when I was a kid, I have very distinct memories of I had a lot of outdoor autonomy as a child, I guess is the way I would put it. I would ride my bike quarter mile, half mile, find a pop can on the way, go to the gas station on the main thoroughfare in town and buy candy. Right. Yeah. And I mean, this would have been I was less than 10 years old because this was before I moved to Boston, and I did that around the age of 10. And so I was not old enough to be interfacing with adults at a gas station, right? I should not have been half a mile to a mile from home by any kind of reasonable standard of modern standard anyway of parenting, right? Because there were no air tags, there were no cell phones, I was just MIA from my mom's purview.
Just a free range kid.
Yeah. For the current term is feral children, right? I was a feral child in a lot of ways.
I was a latchkey kid. They called me latchkey kid because
I wasn't like my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so like she was there. I was just allowed to wander off, right? And can you imagine in today's society an 8 or a 9-year-old walking into a gas station with a half a dozen beer cans, turning them in for money and leaving with candy, and people wouldn't I don't know. I live in small town Iowa now, so maybe that isn't going to be that uncommon in my life. But
this is geography.
But this wasn't small town Iowa. That was the second largest major city in the state. Like it was a urban area. I don't know how I'm going to stop my kids from doing it, right? But it is definitely something I'm going to have a little more oversight over, if that makes any sense, or at least
I get it.
Observational, like, hey, you left the geofence on your watch. Where'd you go? Right?
Dude, look what I have here. I mean, is this extreme now? Right? We got these air tags.
My kids.
How do you air tag your kids? Do you have them in watches, or do you put them in the soles of their shoes? Like, how do you? It just says that this is what it's come to.
They have faux watches, so they're these little silicone watches with Minnie Mouse, and there's an air tag in each one of them.
There you go.
And when my oldest daughter gets old enough, she's not taking it off. She will get an Apple Watch. Everybody's gonna be like, "That's ridiculous," but I can call it, I can text it, she can call me, and I get GPS location as long as there's cell phone service. And nowadays she can hit 911 and hold her wrist up to the sky, and it'll talk to a satellite and tell me there's a problem. Like, It's going to happen.
Pretty solid.
Yeah. Trust me, I'm the guy who would GPS implant his kids. Okay, I'm gonna admit it. Like if that was a thing, they'd have a subdermal implant that they could remove when they were 18. Like that's
for the audio only listeners. By the way, I was holding AirTags, and I always forget. I'm always like thinking that people are only watching these on YouTube. They're not. Like I wish I could conduct a poll, like who's listening versus who's watching, like where a majority of people are coming from.
That's what the analytics are for.
Yeah, I don't know how to look at analytics, but I'm a content creator
too. A word on the dashboard, that A word that's multiple syllables you can't understand. Click that one. Yeah,
like Reels analytics and YouTube analytics. I don't know podcast analytics. I don't make any. Anyway, the success of this podcast is just gonna. It's hinges on us being able to read analytics, and we're not going anywhere.
Oh, no.
Well, so if it's cool with you, I'll bring up one thing, and I think it is something that we've talked about weeks ago, but one thing that I did as a kid that I don't know that we're really going to do this with my kids are sleepovers. We did a lot of sleepovers growing up, and with a bunch of buddies, and we would just basically stay up all night and play Tony Hawk Pro Skater on PlayStation. Honestly, in my experience, it was fine. Like nothing bad happened. I've heard horror stories of assaults and just bad things that are happening, and especially as we've gotten older, just progressively, just like when I was a kid, this happened, and things that people are dealing with today, because of things that happen as a result of sleepovers. But although that was something that I did a lot as a kid, I don't know that it's something that we're really going to have our kids do. If it is something that, a conversation that we'd entertain, I would prefer that we host that. I don't trust other parents out there. I mean, it's hard because like we have a lot of friends who their kids play with our kids, and it's not that I don't trust them, but I don't trust them. So even though that they're super close to me, I
don't trust you. It's that I don't trust you. Yeah.
But then there's also the flip side.
The lawnmower, but you're not borrowing my kid. Yeah.
But on the flip side, I was like, sure, I'd rather like be the house that everyone's comfortable to be here and host. But at the same time, it's like, what if we host a sleepover and something bad happens? And then they blame it on me, or I have to take responsibility because it happened under my roof. Now it becomes a liability issue. I'm like, what the? So I'm like, I want to rinse my hands of it altogether. We're not going to do it at all. And that's just something that it's just sad though, because the great memories with my friends, at least in my experiences, having sleepovers at buddies' houses. But that's.
I'll let Ben go, but I think yours and I fall into the same category, and I think we should talk about like what that looks like. But let's see if Ben's falls into the same realm,
or he just did something stupid.
Yeah.
And he's like,
gonna light fires, bottle rockets at my forehead.
We're not gonna throw rocks off of bridges at cars on a freeway.
Nothing like that. There was no freeway within an hour's drive of where I grew up. So I grew up, small town America, sort of. And when I say small town, I mean, we had one stoplight in my entire high school graduating class, who I went to school with from kindergarten through the day I graduated, was 62 kids.
62.
So I knew 62.
That's where I live right now.
Yeah. So we
10 times
very, very small.
That's wild.
So and that was a K through 12 county school. So a lot of kids rode the bus an hour to school every morning. So we were very much, big 400-acre farms, 1,000-acre farms, big territory, not a lot of people. So much like Andrew, I grew up basically being able to be outside. If it was warm out, I was on my bike and I was over at a friend's house, riding through town, going to the local Cumberland Farms or Stewart's or getting pizza or whatever. Rode my bike to and from school up until the point I could drive. Not something I would probably let my kids do today. First of all, just because it's like a 20-minute drive to the local elementary school down a 55 And when I say 55, what I really mean is like a 70-mile-an-hour highway. So there's really no way to get there safely without driving. Even something like riding the bus, like we're really truly considering, at least for the first sort of couple of years, not letting our kids ride the bus. Because again, the same thing keeps happening. There's a ton of bullying. There's a ton of like fist fights break out on the bus. And especially when they're starting school, like kids in kindergarten, there's such just a size and like size, weight, and like physical presence difference between the kids who are in, you know, 4th, 5th grade and the kids who are in kindergarten, and they're all on the same bus. And, you know, I think one of the benefits of growing up in such a small town is that if I got bullied by somebody, or if I bullied somebody else, their mom knew my mom knew their mom. They probably went to high school together. Like it wasn't going to fly. Like it was so easy to keep everyone in line because your uncle's a police officer and your mom is best friends with their mom, even though they're a couple years older than you. So like you get beat up by somebody, you know, it travels fast. Somebody's mom knows that day that their kid was in a fight, and it all gets taken care of and hashed out. Whereas like today, we live in a really rapidly growing area, and there's a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of people I don't know, a lot of neighbors I don't know, even just in our neighborhood, people that I don't know. And then the other thing that you brought up, Andrew, is sleepovers. Like that's something that it happens with immediate family. So like my mom can take my kids for a sleepover. There are very few select people that are allowed to have our kids for a sleepover, and it's because, you know, they're effectively like family members. And even then, it's like, it's still, you kind of think about it for a minute. You're like, oh, you know, I know them, but do I really know them?
Right.
You know, what happens behind closed doors? And you're trusting someone with a piece of yourself. And I think the other piece to this is like, we have so much more access to information and statistics and data than we ever did.
Yeah.
Some of this has probably happened and was kind of hush hush and nobody really talked about it. But with the majority of people having access to the internet and the ability to kind of post and share their story as they get older, I feel like part of it is we're just learning more about the things that happened and trying to keep it in perspective too, of like, bad news travels much faster than good news. So like the sensational bad stuff is going to make its way to us much faster than the good news. Like how many thousands of sleepovers happen and everything's perfectly fine. How many dozens of sleepovers happen where something bad actually happens, and that's what makes its way to our news feeds or Instagram posts or whatever.
And that's the point I was making earlier, is that my thing of like being a feral child and running around with a bike and just the risk of getting kidnapped or someone, you know, injuring me, it falls in the same category as Andrew's, of like, it probably happens 1,000 times a day in this country that a kid walks into a grocery store or a gas station alone and buys something all over this country and nothing happens to them. We hear about the 5 where it happens,
and it sends us into
sends us into a rage spout, right? There are probably sleepovers that happen every night of the year throughout this country, in every state. No one's abused, no one, right? Everybody's happy. It was great, blah 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 blah. We hear about the ones where there was a problem, right?
And that's what's so, man, like,
because it's not like you and I, Andrew, are up there like, man, I went on a sleepover every weekend from the age 30. Like, we're not on Instagram telling that story, because that story's boring. Nobody wants to hear that story.
Yeah, like, right? And like all the sleepovers I went to, like no one got like dicks drawn on their face. No one did like was messing with like alcohol or drugs. Like, I don't know, like we were good kids, and it was like it was actually a good experience. And it's really hard as parents because like you want to toe this line of like, because your kids got to be exposed to the world and they're got to have hardships. They're gonna like get through things. Like that's just how it is. And you got to put them in, you know, let them be those things. But like you also want to protect them from bad, you know, like you know,
the really bad.
Yeah, like you couldn't forgive yourself if like, yeah, sure. And like 95% of the time or 99% of the time, they're going to be finding a sleepover. But like if that 1% does happen, it's like, God damn, like, that would just mess with you.
How
And
do you
that's
forgive
what's
So the
yourself for that?
question is,
exactly.
do you live in the fear state or are you prepared for the consequences?
And that's the whole difficulty
that's a big
of
chunk
us.
of risk.
Yeah. And that's what's so difficult for us as parents in this day and age. It's just like what is appropriate for me to like let them have that experience and go? And what is it of just like, this I no, that's a bad idea. We shouldn't do that.
Right.
There's a risk there, and
I mean,
it's
here's a
I
good
don't know.
one.
Every situation is different for every parent,
How old were you guys when you saw your first angry drunk?
Angry drunk?
Yeah. Like I can clearly remember my first angry drunk, and I was late teens. Was the first like out of control angry drunk. I saw a lot of drunk adults. Don't get me wrong, my aunts and uncles are not sober people, right? But they didn't get angry, they didn't have fights, or at least I don't remember it from my childhood as them being angry, right? But I have clear memories of like the first time an adult was drunk and like and I was old enough to know what was going on.
I remember when I was younger, my dad traveled with me a lot. See, my parents divorced at a very young age, and and so when my mom had custody, but I would visit my dad frequently. And when I was with my dad, he would his way of really, getting to know, like not get to know me, but like hanging out. The way we spend time together is traveling. Yeah, we would bond by through travel. He would take me everywhere. And when I was very young, before 10, we went to the Philippines. That's a developing country, you gotta understand. So, and I remember we would just be in traffic, and just people like banging on the windows, trying to like get money, and just some people that are like really belligerent. And then I remember there's one time where we were driving through. It was like an Indian land, and I remember there's one town that we passed, and there was like people. I don't know if they were dead bodies, or they were just very inebriated and they were just passed out on the street. But I remember like seeing that. I was like, what is this? What am I seeing? And that was like my first like kind of understanding that like, oh, people like indulge.
This is part of the human condition.
Yeah, or people don't have means. And this is their way of getting means. This people struggle and I was like I was before 10 that I saw
first real exposure to the world that's not what your parents choose to expose you to, right? It's sort of exposure to the world as it is without that protective bubble.
Yeah, but luckily that was from my dad. My mom, when I was spending time with my mom,
somebody who was safe.
Like my mom, she really, the view of the world was just like, there's no sex, no one has sex, there's no boobies, like
it just doesn't exist. If she doesn't agree with it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is only Jesus and that's it. And and I was just like, and so I don't know how to bring up those experiences for my kids. But the things that I saw from my dad, because I feel like I go into the state that my mom approached, where it's just like very protective and like there's don't worry about it, turn your head away, versus but like I don't want to be like that, but I just
I tell you what, those freshmen had a really interesting first year of college. I'm just
those kids that never got
I
exposed
feel
to
like
anything.
those kids had a better freshman year than I did. I'm just throwing that out there. They had a lot of firsts,
and that's if they made it through freshman year, because they had a
great first semester.
There were a lot of half-empty dorm rooms after those first 2 semesters where those freshmen didn't make it out.
I don't want my kids to feel like they grew up in a bubble, especially like having gone to college in Utah, right? Like there's definitely like a Mormon bubble, especially like in Provo, Utah, right? And then they grow up in like such a tight knit religious thing, and when they hit that freshman year, they get that first whiff of independence. It's one of two things happen. they continue and they like, that's not right, and you should be praying, and
Right.
or they're just like, I guess I'm doing fentanyl now. Like that's like they just go one of two
There's
directions.
no in between.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just like, oh,
I mean,
oh my gosh, I love drinking so much. This is
it's
amazing.
Yeah.
And then
he
they could just
says
go
it,
all out.
but that was my experience. Is it's either head in the sand, ostrich style, or off the deep end and
Yes.
almost radicalism.
There's like nothing in between, which is so sad. But like, how do
if they are in between, they're not in Utah. They just left and they never came back, and they were like, I'm a Catholic now or something, right? Like,
right. But it's like, I don't. Yeah, it's I don't. Kids are. My oldest is 6, going to be 7. So these are like real things that I'm going to have to, start thinking about it and approaching. But
and I think the challenge of raising kids today too, and I think about this a lot, is that we have so much more access to everything, information,
right,
entertainment, content, good, bad, indifferent, things you agree with, things you don't. And so the only thing we can really do, right, is have open, honest conversations. Either I know or I don't know, or I don't know, and let's explore this together and kind of figure out what the root of this is, because I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And 2, setting up with the, I guess the best way to put it is the sort of moral and mental framework to be able to handle situations that they have not encountered and don't understand.
Right.
Because, you can't prepare them for everything, right? That'd be impossible. There's things I encounter at 36 now that I've never seen before. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I have the tools to deal with this?
Right.
And so my biggest focus is trying to equip the kids with like, there are people who are different than you. There are people who have more money, less money, addictions. Speaking back to like the first time you saw your like first angry drunk, like I know I was under 5. I know I was probably between like 3 and 4. And it's because it was a family member. It was somebody that, struggled with alcoholism. It eventually killed them. But they like, I remember knowing from an early age that what they were experiencing wasn't the same as everybody else. I didn't know why. I didn't know what it was or the root causes or anything like that. But I knew like, okay, I've got this uncle and like, he's a little, it's weird. It's different. I don't really understand it. Like, I know there's a lot of beers kind of everywhere all the time. And it's like, sometimes it's fun and cool. And sometimes it's really scary, but like, I couldn't relate to it because I also didn't have that in my own personal life beyond him. And so, that's something you kind of have to work through, and you start to realize as you get older, like, oh, that's what that was. You can kind of understand everything that went into that.
The whole like porn talks, the sex talks, all that's also all happening at a much earlier point. And to Ben's point, because all this information is at the palm of your hands, and kids are getting
happens earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, man, it's these are conversations that you have to have earlier, because if it's not from you, and it's from other sources, which I mean, like I learned a lot more sometimes from like kids in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade than I did from like my parents at home. So, but like being a source, right? It has to happen earlier. Especially when, kids are getting their, phones at, 10, 11 years old, maybe even earlier in some instances. We just had a kid who over Christmas they got their first phone, and they're 12, and they were like late. Like, well, I'm the last one in my class to get a phone.
Yeah,
so
that's
like, geez. So
that's wild to me.
Yeah, and so like we're having to get ready for a lot of conversations just a lot earlier, and also like new conversations too. Things like with when it's about like LGBTQ kind of discussions, or is that a girl or is that a boy, which is a very innocent question from a child, but then like navigating those types of conversations early on as well, it's it's different. I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier, Andrew. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say what I'm, to Ben's point, right, we're gonna have to equip our kids with the right tools to handle all these conversations or have all these conversations. And I think for me, what I'm attempting to do is, or what my plan on attempting to do is to give them the ability to evaluate a situation effectively and make a decision that's right for them within that situation, right? Because I think what we're either going to find out is that when we're all sitting around in the old folks home having this podcast talking about how we screwed up as parents, and we're either going to be saying we raised a bunch of kids who can't evaluate a situation and just who react, and they're just drones to whatever pops up on their phone next, which we're seeing a lot with the kids who are 17, 18, 19 in their 20s, right? Because their parents just didn't know how to handle the situation because it didn't exist yet. They were the first test runs. And what I'm hoping is that our generation has enough information that we can give our children enough skills to go, look, every little thing that goes ding on your phone, you need to look at it, you need to evaluate it, and you need to make a decision about how useful it is to you in your life. And for the most part, 99% of them, you're going to swipe left and go, that's not a thing I need anymore. Right. And if we do it right, we'll be sitting pretty in our old folks' home going, look how good my kid is at making life choices. They're a surgeon, or they're a doctor, or they're a right. Anyway,
yeah, dude, it's funny that you say that, because like we have there's a family member of ours. His name, I'm not gonna say his name, but he's older. He's 80s, 90s, and as for us, we have like this, we don't want to die, like, and all that. But like I feel like at some point you get to an age and you're like, you know what, I've lived a good life. And the world looks really different, and I'm ready to. When my time is done, I'm going to welcome that with wide open arms. And we have a family member who was helping me with like a drywall project once, and I was chatting with him about it. And he's older, but he was just like, man, the things you guys have to deal with, I made a great impact. I'm done. He's like, I'm tired. When Jesus comes for me, I'm going. I was like, that's funny.
He's not like I listened to a thing by a 95-year-old veteran today about him talking about the Battle of Bastion in World War II.
French,
right? Yeah, the French Battle of Bastion.
Yeah.
And
that's a deep topic.
He was relating his story. He had avoided it for 65 years, right? But what I got from this guy was everything after that in his life was important, but it didn't really affect him. He left it. It was like, that was the thing that defined how I was going to spend the rest of my life. And what I did was I went and made sure that wasn't going to truly affect the rest of my relationships. And he was successful at it. He seems to have led a good life. Right now, it's a social media blip. Who knows if he was actually successful or whatever. But he claimed to have had a 65-year relationship and grandkids and been an educator his whole life. So I'm going with he did it, but he didn't let that little moment destroy him. And I think my question is, how do we raise kids that have that ability? Because in this era, there seems to be a perception that there are always battles of Bastion around every corner. Every next text message is going to be the next, and it's like, that's not the case. Like, this is all little garbage.
The fight or flight sort of life or death feeling is I think it's queued up around this idea that people are trying to find their place. I mean, if you think about the world that we live in now, so the world from when I was, it makes me feel and sound so old when I say this, but literally I'm 36. But the world has changed so quickly that the world I grew up in from 1987 to I would say even to like 2000, 2005 is wildly different than 2005 and forward.
Yes.
And the leaps and bounds we made from a technological standpoint, from an AI standpoint, from the ability for algorithms to feed you what you like and not feed you what you don't like, and therefore you never see opinions that you don't agree with, and therefore opinions you don't agree with must be wrong and they must be crazy and they must be the enemy. Like, that's where I feel like we have a really challenging time to live in, but that we also have a lot of opportunity to talk to our kids and say, like, look, there are going to be people in this world you don't agree with. And that's perfectly okay. Everyone's entitled to do things the way they want to, as long as it's not hurting you or someone else. They're entitled to do it, whether you agree with it or think it's right or wrong, whatever it is. Like, if it's up to your moral standards or it's not. If they're not hurting anyone else, then that's kind of their choice. And so that's where I think we're ending up, is like looking at our kids and saying, these are our standards. This is how we choose to live. This is how I choose to live. You are going to have to take that and interpret it in your life, because there's going to be changes in how you live versus what I live, because the world you're going to live in is going to be different than the world I grew up in.
Right. Well, but I think one of the things that, I mean, I agree with you 100%, right? I think you articulated that very well. One of the things that I think we're being vague about is, right now, the definition of hurt or injured or is so vague that anything that happens is now, you hurt me. Your words hurt. Like, there is a point in which we have to draw a rational line and say, look,
right.
That didn't actually hurt you. You didn't take damage. You're not suffering. You didn't like it. That's completely different.
No, like even like a sales call, like a customer service. My dad was telling me a story about how, like, there's a medical provider and he cares for someone with dementia, and he was like being aggressive with them because he was like, he needed a prescription for their medication, and they were just like, she doesn't need her medication. They're like, what are you talking about? And he started to, and then at one point the person is like, I feel threatened with the way that you're talking to me. And it's like, it's a young 20 something. And it's like, listen, this is now, it's becoming ridiculous that you're having hurt feelings. Like, we're talking about someone's life who needs certain medications, and your decision is going to impact them. That's why I'm a little upset, and I'm getting aggressive. So now you feel threatened, and now you have to end the call, kind of a thing, or elevate to a supervisor for a basic inquiry that is related to your job. Like, that's where are we going to draw that line? And raising this generation of people that's going to rise up to that is definitely something that we're all going to,
as a society, we got to wrap our brains around what being hurt means, and what injury or personal injury looks like. And it can't be a personal opinion, right?
Well,
but it also can't be a courtroom of your peers, because that takes way too long in this day and age.
And at that point, you're saying, I do not control myself, and I do not control and someone else should control what they say or do or how they act, because I have no ability to control my own feelings, thoughts, emotions. And however they address me, talk to me, interact with me will drive my response. Right. And so and that's literally, you're giving up control of the only thing that you control. The only thing that you control in this world is your emotional response or your response to a situation. It's the only thing that you control. And I think there's a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's from, again, we're going back to Stoic philosophy, because I think it's super important. But it's this idea that if you are offended, you are complicit in the offense, because you are allowing yourself to be offended. Sure. There's an agreement that happens when you're offended that says, you have said something, I am agreeing to take part in the offense, because I'm allowing you to control my emotional state by being offended. But if somebody says something you don't like and you just choose to go, well, that's out of my control, and is that my opinion of myself? And if it's not, keep it moving. And I think that's where we guide our kids to say, someone else's opinion of you, if it's not true, it doesn't matter. It won't matter 10 minutes from now. It won't matter a year from now. It won't matter 15 years from now. You will get over it. It'll be okay.
And
the term you're looking for is agency. But we're in a society where people seem to be giving up a lot of their personal agency, and you have to. That'll be big, right? Raising our kids to understand that you're responsible for your own agency. If you give it to someone else, they're going to abuse you. They're going to hurt you with it. They're going to take advantage of you with it.
Every time I hear that word, that is such a
Utah
word Mormon word.
That's
neither here nor there. I'm not gonna dive into that. But I mean, you're right. Anyway, to lighten things up though, let's rewind a little bit and talk about something that I do get to enjoy with my son. That's video games, and it's fun that we are able to relive some of the things that, I mean, we talk about how things have really changed from the past to now. But one thing that hasn't changed is Mario. One thing that hasn't changed is Pikachu or Donkey Kong or Mortal Kombat. No, I'm kidding. We don't do that yet. I mean, actually, Mortal Kombat in retrospect is probably way more tame than some of the other things that exist now. Yeah, rewinding a little bit and talking about, us as 90s kids, what were some of our favorite games from our childhood? I don't know if we broached this topic a little bit ago, but maybe we can each. We did.
We did a draft.
We did.
And then it got onto the list for an actual topic because the draft started to get out of control.
So, I mean, we'll bring a few into the table. One of the side scrollers though. I think one of you guys, no, I think it was Andrew who brought it up. The Ninja Turtle side scrollers,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle side
that
scroller.
one honestly just sits with me as one of the best. But then I saw, oddly enough, I follow these weird 90s throwback Instagrams, and
me too. Me too. Do they have the nostalgic music behind it too? So it's just like imagine it's an early morning in 2005 or 2002 or whatever, and I'm just like, it makes me so sad.
Yeah, and it's like you're listening to this CD and you just got done playing Pokemon, and there you go. There's our Pokemon sound effect right there. So yeah, and it's just like all these 90s things, but like one of them was like just a rewind of like video games, and I saw one. It was Aladdin. That was another side scroller. It was like Aladdin and Toy Story. The Aladdin one though, and then he would like jump on like the canopy things, and then to jump up and collect,
and you had to bounce and god,
I saw that and I was like, no,
you could never get out of the temple. You could get to the temple. You could never get out of the temple. Yeah.
I absolutely loved that game. So those side scrollers, Ninja Turtles, that one. I'll throw one more out there. Mega Man X. Mega Man was super fun to play on Super Nintendo. I absolutely loved it. Like as you would go, Mega Man started off blue, but you would like collect all these like upgrades to upgrade your armor, and he would slowly start to turn like white. And I just those are great. Yep. I mean, I could go with like the Marios and stuff like that, but those three, just like when I see those on IG Reels, because they always show up inevitably, they hit.
You know what it is for me? And no game, to my knowledge, has redone it as well. Everybody has tried. Every bar that I am aware of on the planet has one of these in an attempt to redo this nostalgia. But Duck Hunt will live on forever in my youth as the best hunting game and the most frustrating hunting game.
On NES,
you could play Big Game Hunter, on the original NES,
and you would never hit it.
And that little
dog just clicking on the TV.
I would laugh at you.
Oh god! Like, as much as I play Big Game Hunter and I enjoy that game, it's so much easier. Games. You got reloads. You can pull the trigger quickly. It responds. It's on target. You don't have to be 4.5 meters from the screen with like a perfect angle. Like,
it was
Duck Hunt.
That was a good call. I mean, I remember like walking right up to the screen and the freaking gun, the tip of the gun just clanking on the glass of the TV.
And you still missed.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was mad, but no, good call. Good call out. On that note, I do like playing fun like hunting games. There's one, I think it was like a Cabela's Big Game Hunter, and where there was like bullet time where you would shoot and it would like slow down and
watch it.
show you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you got
Yeah, that
anything
one is
but the
fun.
lungs and the heart, it was just kind of like, you're a terrible shot, man. You got to do better than that for the sake of the animal. I'm like, damn it.
I really got after you.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
judging you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to see somebody redo Duck Hunt where you can shoot the dog. That's the game I'd like to play at this point. Like,
When it laughs at you.
hey, Nintendo, redo the Wii game. All right, I'll go back and buy a Wii. Give me the little pistol, and I want to shoot the duck just once. Right? I miss the duck. I miss the duck. He starts laughing. He gets it, and it's like, you shot the dog. Game over. Right? That's fine. I'm okay with it. I just want to hit him once. All right.
There's we're talking about kind of older NES, Sega games, but if we were to kind of push forward a little bit, kind of going into the PS3 era, Tony Hawk, man, all the Tony Hawk games were great, and they re-released them. I haven't downloaded them and played them yet, but I will, because those were a really good time. And then another great one was Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal was good.
See,
Final
I was not a
Fantasy
Tony. Final Fantasy
VII
7 was good.
I love Final Fantasy 10. I was a big 10 guy.
Yeah, but I couldn't do the online part.
That was an online at the time.
Or was that 11?
I think that may have been 11. Final Fantasy X was the first one where they used like voice actors to like bring the story to life.
Anyway,
wait, what were you saying?
I did 7.
I was not a Tony Hawk kid because I didn't skateboard, but I rode BMX bikes. So Dave Mira's BMX,
dude,
was like I wasted hours on that game to the point where like I got in trouble for not doing my homework type deal.
Dude.
But yeah, Dave Mira's BMX was like you could go to Woodward. So like that was like my fantasy was like when I was hardcore into BMX was like I wanted to do a Woodward summer camp in Pennsylvania and go like with like all the pro BMXers, and I was like I somehow thought at 11 or 12 I was good enough to like be at that camp. So I was like, Mom, I need like $2,000 so I can go to bike camp.
Talk about a dangerous place. Like, let's put that into perspective in the 90s, right? Mom, let's put 11, 12-year-old boys at a camp with 18-year-old skateboarding drug addicts and alcoholics. Like, that sounds like an excellent idea.
It's fine.
Right? Yeah,
here's the thing. Top of this episode, though, we're talking about like things that we wouldn't let our kids do. Like, I would probably rather them do that than go to a sleepover, though.
I guess I don't know,
but there's funny. There's go ahead.
Well, as I say, you guys like jumped a whole genre of games. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess maybe there is a console life in between, like when I started and when you guys started. But I mean, that whole SNES level of the original Mario Kart was out there.
Mm-hmm. Was the original Star Fox.
The original Star Fox.
Star Fox was so good.
Yeah. All those you can play on the Switch for free right now.
And
by the
those games were like a level up from where I started playing video games, right? Like those graphics were, and then we lived on on N64's GoldenEye. I mean, that was our sleepover game du jour. If we had a sleepover,
till 3
there
in
were
the morning.
times when we got 2 TVs in one room, and Dad was pissed because he had to haul the giant TV downstairs. But we had 2 64s and 8 controllers and 12 kids in the basement screaming at each other. And
every time somebody would get a Moonraker and just destroy everybody else,
just rake everybody,
so bad.
No slappers only. No one-shot kill. Why is everybody odd job? This sucks. Yeah, I mean,
the thing is, okay, so it's undeniable. GoldenEye was the game, but I will say there was an underrated shooter though that was extremely fun as well. It was called Perfect Dark. Did you guys ever play?
No, Perfect Dark was GoldenEye with different skin.
Yes, it was GoldenEye with different skin, more like aliens and stuff like that. And they had a gun that can like shoot through walls, and it was like insane. It was, dude.
Perfect Dark was fun.
I absolutely love Perfect Dark. And then there was but the sports games that Ben even talked about. There was one. It was just called 1080. It was like a snowboarding game. Played that a bunch.
1080 was super frustrating because the moves were really hard to do.
It was
because every move was like a 14 button combination to like get him to spin.
Exactly. Yeah, it felt like Mortal Kombat like moves where you have this like it was hard to pull those off. There's another game called Pastrana versus McGrath. It was like not BMX, but it was more like motocross kind of a thing.
Motocross, yeah.
That was fun too. No, but N64 definitely was
Wave Race.
Yeah, if you guys are watching on YouTube, by the way,
Race.
Dude, Wave Race
the original Mario Tennis.
Okay. Wait, did you guys ever play Hydro Thunder?
I never played Hydro Thunder.
It was called
Hydro
Thunder, and it was like these race boats. Oh,
yeah.
Yep.
I remember going to Fuddruckers, and they had like a Hydro Thunder like machine that you would like pay like 25 cents to play the thing. But then when I realized that it was on N64, I freaking lost my mind because we were at Blockbuster where you can rent not just movies, you can rent games. You rent games, right?
Let's explain this to you, young chaps. There used to be a place you could go, a physical store.
A physical location.
Where you could rent movies and video games. And if you lived in a small town like I did, it was a family-owned business.
Look. It was like GameStop
with a back room.
Buy and exchange, except for you just rented it for 3 days.
Yep.
Instead of buying and taking it back and getting screwed on the price every time like we do
Needless
now.
to say, I held on to Hydro Thunder and Diddy Kong Racing for way too long, and we incurred a lot of fees. So, yeah.
At what point do you just own it?
So do you guys remember when you could actually play video games at the arcade?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could find the game at the store. Like Cruisin' USA was a sit down behind the wheel arcade game, cost $1 to play. And it was one of the first ones that was online where you could like dial a phone number. And it would it had a 10 key, and you could dial your PIN number, and you could have an account on Cruisin' USA, and you could sit down at any Cruisin' USA machine. And anyway, I loved that game.
Dude,
and then
Cruisin'
I
USA
found it for the it was either the 64 or the GameCube. And
you know what? I did not realize
amazing.
That. I only ever thought that you could play Cruisin' USA on at the thing. But I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like Googling it right now and like seeing the freaking logo.
Yeah, Cruisin' USA. And it had but the best part about it, so this was before, in my opinion, I'm sure it wasn't, but this was before like Gran Turismo racers were a thing, right?
Yeah.
And so they'd only do
like
one
97.
map. Yeah, and the maps were always the same. And so you could play on your 64. I'm pretty sure it was a 64, and learn all the secrets and screw up and hit reset as many times as you want. And then you could go to the arcade and put your money in, and you had a pedal and a wheel, and you could use all the secrets you'd learned to get the high score on the machine, right? And man, we played that one.
What games had a Konami code other than like up down left right BA start? Remember that? You know that code?
Street Fighter and what were?
I know Mortal Kombat. You can do that.
Mortal Kombat. Nah, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong ones.
Or maybe it was a different man. Oh my gosh! Wait, it's just so funny that and by the way, Gran Turismo. That was like the first. I remember they had endurance races in Gran Turismo where you'd race this track for like 4 hours or something like that. So I'd be in my Toyota Supra, and that I was all maxed out with all the gear, and then I changed the drivetrain, Mom, and I don't know, just like all these
Contra
things that you're
thinking of Contra.
I don't think I the Konami code.
Yeah.
Man, there you go, because it was made by Konami. Anyway, oh gosh, I'm like Googling all these things. I'm seeing so many different logos and just like absolute. It's a fun topic to go down in a fun.
Were you
guys PC gamers at all?
No, I wasn't. I was strictly console.
See, you missed out on a whole genre.
The only thing that I did play on PC was like a war game where you would control people and you'd tell them to go.
Red Alert.
What's that?
Red Alert.
Say it again. I think
Red
it was
Alert.
that. Yeah.
Command and Conquer. Red Alert.
Command and Conquer. Command and Conquer. That was the only one that I played.
That was the end. That was kind of the one of the major ones in the genre. But so everybody knows World of Warcraft, right?
Yep.
MMORPG made millions of dollars. The first game Blizzard released that was, in my opinion, a major success was called Warcraft. And it's the history. It is World of Warcraft, and it was orcs versus humans, and it was it wasn't turn-based, it was real-time strategy, but it was that build a city, build a fort, you had to build roads, and it was amazing. We played that until we were blue in the face when I was in middle school. Warcraft, followed by StarCraft, followed by Warcraft 2, and then came Diablo with BattleNet.
Dude,
And
let's not go, if we open the door on Diablo, Andrew will go all out. Guys, if you had any fun games that you really enjoyed, let us know in the comments section. Shoot us any sort of DMs. We'd love to hear from you guys. That'll do it for this week's episode. It was really, really fun getting to go down memory lane. If you have any thoughts about any of the parenting topics that we talked about at the top of the episode, let us know. Check the links down in the show notes in the YouTube description. If you want to join us on Discord, you can always visit dadverb.com for courses from pregnancy up through year 1 of fatherhood. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.